Hi there. Welcome back to the channel. Dominic, the CX guy. 8 years as Zendesk consultant, 2 years as Zendesk partner. I have been in CX for the last 14 years. And yeah, I'm old. Okay, so today we're going to continue the discussion about Zendesk setup. And we've come a long way. I was surprised that the other day when I was looking at through the list of the projects that the individual steps that we need to go through in order to set up Zendesk. I was surprised to see that we're actually making good progress, and I think we're 2/3 there, and we just have a few more lessons to go. Today, I'm going to trying to keep these intros shorter because I don't know, I feel they tend to be a bit longer. And I'm explaining as if you're watching this for the first time, which many of you are. But anyway, I'm doing this video series in order to help you and also share some of the knowledge that I've gained throughout my experience as a Zendesk consultant. I have been subcontracted by Zendesk to work on projects exactly like these. So I'm sharing the methodologies for some of you to benefit from. Hopefully this is going to help. I know it helps. Companies that do it are flourishing and are doing very, very well. 90% of customers are not Zendesk clients, and Zendesk users are not using these methods, and it shows. And I think they would very much benefit from them. And the way that this works, I talk about what we're going to be doing. Then we jump into a slide deck. Then we jump into Zendesk, and then you do some homework. And today we're going to discuss business rules. So in the process of setting up Zendesk, we're discussing business rules today. Namely, we're discussing triggers, automations, and service level agreements. Normally, this is a 2-hour session, 2 by 2-hour session. So in total, it's 4 hours. Obviously, it implies having somebody to talk to about the setup and to have an open conversation after we talk about how to do things and what are the best practices and why we should set up Zendesk in a certain way or another. So let me share my screen and I'll show you where we are. I have my trusty Evernote here with the process. So we're in the design session, and we went through all of these checkboxes, and now we're in business rules. And I am going to, most probably today we're going to be doing triggers and automations. What's going to be next? Then SLAs. We'll see. Today, I think we'll be able to go through triggers and automations. We'll see. Let's just leave triggers for now because this is a lengthy lesson in general. And then, we just have reporting, collaborative configuration is something that we work on together. Technical assistance is also something which I can't necessarily do a video on. And then, launch is a pre-launch checklist, which we will be doing. Anyways, let's not spend too much time on that. And let's jump into the slide deck to discuss our core business rules. So today we're going to be discussing again triggers, automations, and SLAs. We'll see if we have time to go through SLAs as well, because setting things up is quite quite a long but longer session, because it's a lot of chat and a lot of discussions and a lot of discovery still to be done. Because as you maybe, if you watched other videos, I like to talk about things maybe 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, and then do them once. So we do things in a productive manner, right? So it's more productive to talk about things first and then do a concrete setup than it is to just jump in, do the setup, which is what 90% of people do. They have a limited understanding. They go in, set it up, and then in 6 months' time, it's lagging, it's clogged, it's difficult to understand, it's unproductive, and overall a small shit show. So we're trying to avoid all that. Continuing, we have core business rules. So meet the team. Yay, this is me. So I notice I'm speeding up the tempo. We're trying to make everyone's time a little bit more efficient. Yeah, because yeah, usually I know I've come to realize that usually for me the tempo has to be a little bit more increased, but in order to keep everyone involved, you have to say things twice. You have to find examples, different examples, so the information passes through. Then it makes sense to repetition is the mother of all teachers, and yeah, I firmly believe that. So today's agenda is yeah, to identify the business rules you need in order to increase your productivity and improve customer satisfaction. And today we're going to be discussing channels, triggers, automations, and SLAs. So channels is a brief discussion we just discussed about the ticket lifecycle, if you will. Channels are actually ticket life cycle is a more accurate description. Timeline, we are here in core business rules. So this is a 2 by 2 hour session, but I'm going to try to keep it a little bit more brief. Maybe this is even longer sometimes, but yeah, we're not going to get into the details. Okay, so now the deck, then, oh my God, I don't know why this is jumping so much. I mean, I know it's this mouse. The deck, which is the slide deck, then there's the system, where we jump into Zendesk, and then there's the homework, which is the spreadsheet, which I keep referring to. Alrighty, so here we go. Let's speak Zendesk. Let's transform everything into Zendesk. So the channel strategy, what we've discussed so far during all of this Zendesk setup, which you can find in this playlist, which is called Zendesk Setup. And by the way, please subscribe to the channel, like this video to maybe help the algorithm share this information with other people who are trying to learn about Zendesk. Thank you. I really appreciate it. During this fictional setup, we've discussed some channels that we are going to move forward with, and we're going to do email, we're going to do web form, we're going to do chat, we're going to do social media, and these are the channels. Well, Telegram we won't be using, but it is possible. So we'll be using, yeah, let's imagine Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and we'll be using social messaging. So we have videos for all of these, which you can, you can find in the playlist. And yeah, so these are the channels. And now we're going to discuss the ticket lifecycle. I know that you maybe know this if you've done your training very well, very diligent of you, and I appreciate you for doing so. Just going to do a bit of recap, or for those who don't know, ticket lifecycle goes in the following manner. So in Zendesk, we have, these are all the ticket statuses. So ticket is status new, open, pending, on hold, solved, and closed. And there's an additional one, which is called archived. We'll get into that in just a bit. So how this works is when a ticket comes into Zendesk, it doesn't really matter which channel it comes from. It just ends up in Zendesk. It has status new. This means that nobody has seen it. I mean, yeah, maybe people can see it, but it has no assignee. So it has no assignee. It's still in status new. When the ticket gets an assignee, like an actual agent who is going to be in charge of it and responsible for it, and can be can assume accountability for a ticket, then it has a status open, moves to status open. Status open is also the ticket means that the ticket is waiting for an action on our end. Right, so the customer will not know the status of these statuses. The customer just needs to know that the ticket is not solved or solved. That's it. That's all that we need to incorporate in our communication. Nothing else is necessarily important or valuable to the client. Client just wants it solved. Doesn't matter what processes you have internally. So this is how Zendesk works. And I know that if you're coming from another system, you might have other types of statuses. That's not necessarily helpful. It's helpful to you for you to understand how Zendesk statuses work and use these accordingly. Okay, so open is when a ticket is assigned, and it also is waiting for an answer from us or an action from us as a team, as a staff team that are working on the ticket to solve it. Okay, so when we are in status open and we perform an action and we are waiting for more information from the customer, we put the ticket in pending. So we follow up on a ticket and say, dear client, thank you for reaching out or whatever. In order to help you solve this request, I'm going to need some more information from you. I'm going to need a copy of the bill. I'm going to need your, I don't know, your address. I'm going to need whatever is relevant to solve a ticket, to whatever is needed from the customer to get back to us, and the agent can use that information to, find the resolution for the ticket, right? So to solve it. So then we are putting the ticket in pending state. Pending state is going to stay for as long as the customer needs to get back to us. And then customer gets back to us and says, yeah, here's the information you needed. Ticket goes back to open, right? So status open, it's again an open, meaning that an action is again awaited from us as a staff member. So we have to jump on the ticket and perform another action. Let's imagine that the ticket is now back to us and open, and we have the information we need, and now we need to reach out to a third party or a partner who can, for example, take this information and perform an action that we are unable to as a staff member in Zendesk. And then, or we escalate to someone else in our team or team leader or manager or etc. In essence, this is what the status on hold is for. So I am waiting for a third party to get back to me. I'm waiting for my manager to get back to me because I've escalated. I'm putting the ticket on hold. The customer is still waiting for an answer from us. On hold is essentially us knowing that we are still working on it, right? But we as a staff internally are not necessarily in control of what happens to the ticket now. It's on hold because it's somebody else is working on it. Then whoever comes back to, whoever is needed to, like a third party to jump on the ticket, gets back to us, and then the ticket can go back to open. And with this information, we can just let the customer know that, hey, we've solved this request for you, and we set it to solve. If it's in solved, it's going to stay there usually for a number of days. It is recommended that you keep the ticket in a solved status for at least 24 hours or maybe 48 hours, depends. This all depends on you, because you're an agent and you think the ticket is solved. In your mind it's solved, but the customer may think differently. So that's why it's good to leave a good, like for example, 24 hours or 48 hours for the ticket to stay in status solved, so that the customer gets back to us, it's going to go back to status open. Usually these status solved, if the customer is happy with the resolution and everything, ticket stays in solve for maybe 4 days. This is the standard practice from Zendesk. And then after 4 days from solved, it moves to closed. If a ticket has moved to closed, then that means that if the customer gets back to us in the same thread that they have gotten back to us, from a closed status, the ticket doesn't go back to open anymore. However, a new ticket is being created. So a new ticket is being created with a new ID and with a unique ID, which has the status new. However, there is a reference in that ticket which says ticket is a comes from this closed ticket, which is ID number whatever. So it's a new ticket which says ticket came from a closed ticket, which its ID is blah, right? So you can, as an agent, you can click that and visit the old ticket and see the ticket properties of that ticket and see what the conversation was about. Because maybe the customer after a week gets back and says, yeah, you know what, this was actually not solved. The properties from this closed ticket that come into this new ticket are going to be still present, like tags are going to still be there, custom fields are still going to be there. So that's good because you at least have a reference to exactly what has been the discussion was picked up on. So this is in short the statuses used in Zendesk and how you can use them to work inside Zendesk. Please bear in mind that many companies are used to ticket life cycles from other systems, and they carry that information across in Zendesk, and it messes up their reporting. Why? Because if they don't apply the same logic that Zendesk has, the Zendesk uses these statuses for, then everything becomes a mess. And for example, pending is always us waiting for a reply from the customer. Well, some companies, for example, use on hold for the same purpose. Doesn't work like that. Why? Because it affects the service level agreements, which is a topic which we'll be covering a little bit later in our meeting, or maybe the next time, the next recording. We'll see how we do with time. So be very mindful that you have to use these statuses exactly like Zendesk intended if you want to use the Zendesk functionality that derives from it, which is service level agreements, which is maybe automations, which is reporting, right? So if you want to have a authentic reporting, because at the end, this is what, as a manager, whoever is a manager and gives and is interested in seeing reports, right? Because that's the, let's say, the end result of everything you set up in Zendesk. So if you have good reports, then you'll be able to find solutions to your product, and you can improve on your customer service team. You can improve on your product. You can improve on your company as a whole. So if you want to have relevant reports at the end, you want to have you want to use Zendesk features as Zendesk intended their functionality to be used. Okay, so I know that this might sound corny, but if you put shit in, you get shit out, right? So the reports are what gets out, right? So if you put caca in, you get caca out. If you put good things in, then good things come out in reports. So the final result, end result, is cool. All right, so now let's talk about our first business rule, which is triggers. All right, so triggers, as you might remember or not, doesn't matter. Triggers are business rules that are event based. So what this means is, like, if a ticket is, for example, an event is a ticket being created, an event is a ticket being updated, an event is a ticket, status changing, which is an update. So if a set of events happens, if ticket is created and type of request is billing, then fire a notification to an agent. Right? Very simple. So a set of events is have happened, then some conditions will immediately take effect and fire. Right? So that is a trigger. So very simple. Events happen. A condition. So some conditions are met here, and then some actions are performed, like immediately. Bam, bam, bam. Just like that. Triggers fire from top to bottom. So if you create a list of triggers, they fire from top to bottom. So it goes from, number 1 goes to number 2, number 3. If number 3, for example, is fired, it's fired, and then it goes back again and it fires, and it looks through the conditions of all the triggers again. And then it finds another one, it fires, then it goes back to the number 1, and until it finishes the list. So they run against each ticket. All triggers run against each ticket. So if some conditions are met against a ticket, that trigger fires, then it goes back to number 1, goes through the list again until, if it matches some other conditions, it fires again. And until, everything has been until the list of triggers has passed, like it all has been executed. Okay, so some design principles about triggers. So you need to think about organizing your triggers by the following action sets. So actions, so it's set, assign, and notify. So in this order specifically, and I'll tell you why in a bit. So if you think about it logically, you have to first set properties against the ticket. So you have to set priority, maybe you have to set what type of request it is. You have to maybe set anything that is relevant to setting ticket properties. So when a ticket comes in, you have to make sure that you set the ticket properties correctly to its priorities. And then you have to make sure that you assign it to the appropriate group, right? So once you know, for example, the priority, and once you've set, for example, the region from which the ticket comes from, you know who to assign it to, right? So you need to then assign it, right? So its priority is urgent and the region is Germany, then assign it to the German group. If the ticket is, for example, normal priority and the region is England, then assign it to the English group, maybe, for example. And then the third one is notify, right? So once we know, for example, we set the ticket properties, we assign it to the appropriate group. Now we can notify, for example, the customer or the team that the ticket has been assigned to them, or the ticket has been, for example, received and everything is fine, right? So this is the order: set, assign, and then notify customers or agents or whoever. Encourage the use of global set triggers when possible, which for example, setting default priority and type. So this is for a ticket, if you're using all SLAs, for example, if a ticket comes in, you want to set a priority to it, right? So each ticket, let's say, has a baseline, and they all get the priority normal or a priority low, right? So, you know, in Zendesk, you have low priority, normal, high priority, and urgent, right? So you have these four. You can also work with a simplistic, for example, a normal and high. So only two priorities, but let's assume that you are working with, you're a badass and you work with the more advanced one, which is 4 priorities. And then ticket type, as you know, in Zendesk, there's a ticket field, a system ticket field, which is called ticket type, which is task, type task, type problem, type incident, and there is another one which I forget. We'll get to that in a quick bit. And then encourage, the use of global set triggers when possible, with others as identified as well. Group specific triggers may override default set triggers, right? So if you have a group of triggers, it may override the set trigger. So yeah, you have to keep that in mind as well. Assign tickets to group instead of individuals. Yes, and we will be doing this in just a bit to show you what it looks like. So if you assign a ticket, it's best to assign it at the group level, because then it comes into the visual of more than one person, right? So if you if you assign a ticket to a specific person, that person maybe, I don't know, is out for lunch, or that person is out sick during one day, for example. And then those tickets are not going to be visible to everyone else. So it's best approach to assign them to a group, and then the group can just pick up tickets and assign them amongst themselves. Hipaa considerations, so update email notifications to avoid accidentally sending PHI in emails. This is something which is a little bit more technical. You can go in and read more about this, about sensitive content. Also, you can go and read more about, about triggers and how they work, and triggers and conditions and actions reference. So you can go in and read more about this. And then afterwards, I have a list of recommended triggers. So I have created these in a exact order that I mentioned. So set, assign, and notification, and then there's some custom triggers. So we have in set a few tickets, a few triggers, which I recommend that you use. It all depends on your business and how you have things set up and how you intend to do business. So it varies obviously from business case to business case. So this is a let's say a general and not so general list. So this is this is depending on the company. These can vary quite a bit, but there are some, let's say, rules of thumb, triggers that you can start out with. So Zendesk comes on with a few of them, which we'll be going over, especially the notifications. So notifying requester, receive request. And for example, what else? notifying assignee of reopened tickets, notifying requester NCCs of comment update. So when you update a ticket, we will be going through a few of them, and we will be also creating a few of them. So we'll be creating a set trigger, we'll be creating an assign trigger, and then we'll be going over one notification trigger, which is this one, notify requester receive request. So now it's your turn. This is, yeah, obviously everything in here is up for discussion. So, and everything would have been tailored to however your business is set up. I'm just going to go over some of these, how to set up some of these, and then you usually go ahead and have homework and you set the rest of the triggers for yourself. So you'll be able to learn and set and yeah, you'll be able to learn how to create triggers and be autonomous and not need my help all the time. Obviously, I can take this over from you if you're busy and I can do it for you, but it's good to be autonomous. It's good to be to have control over what your setup is about, because you can always go back and make changes whenever needed. Okay, so let's now go back to, let's jump into Zendesk. So we are in our test environment. And let's go to admin. And I am scrolling not all the way down, but here at business rules. So I'm going to go to triggers. I'll walk you through routing a little bit. This is a skill-based routing. This is a new feature from Zendesk. It's great for setting up languages, for example, for using skills with languages. So if you're offering support in multiple areas and you have agents that speak multiple languages, then you can use skill-based routing, which is, it's a pretty cool feature. You can live without it, but yeah, if you have a numerous team, like you have over hundreds of agents, for example, and it's very, very good to play around with this and set up skill-based routing. Okay, so what triggers look like? Yeah, it's like this. I have these 4 categories, right? So I can go ahead and see the triggers that are in this initial category: SLA category, CS, customer satisfaction, answer bot, etc. So what we will be doing is we will be creating those categories: set, assign, and notify, just so you can get a feel of what it is to create triggers from scratch, how to add to your list, and so on. So I can obviously search from here, I can filter, but what I'm interested in is I'm not going to add a trigger right now. I'm going to go here and I'm going to add a category. And I'm going to call this one set. Set triggers. All right, nice. All right, so if you can see, I have directly under it my a quick action, so add trigger. So set, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set exactly what I mentioned in the slide deck. Set a default priority, normal priority to tickets coming to the email Dominic the CX guy at Gmail. Remember in our discussion of setting up the email channel, we set up on a Gmail, which was my Gmail, that dominicthecxguy.com. Dominic the CX guy at gmail.com. So we set up that email into the system and we're going to create a trigger for it and say if a ticket comes in to that email address, we set the priority to normal. So we have a baseline of if a ticket comes in, has a type of priority. It's good to use priorities, especially if you're going to be using service level agreements. So you can obviously create different automations depending on the priority that you give a ticket. But most important to be used is in the case of using service level agreements, because service level agreements ride on the backs of priorities. All right, so let's go ahead and create a trigger. Add trigger. Okay, so we have to give it a name. Trigger name, I always try to make these as intuitive as possible. So what am I trying to do? Like simplify it to the most basic understanding of what it is, and then I just write that down. So what do I want to do? Set normal priority to Dominic, the CX guy emails, incoming emails. Oops, sorry. Incoming emails. So now I can add a description, but to me, at least in my mind, this is very, very much telling of what it is this trigger is doing. So that's why I try to keep everything very, very concise, so that whenever somebody is looking at this, will understand what it is about. So set normal priority, Dominic the CX guy incoming emails. What could this mean if not exactly what it says? So that's why I don't use the description, because I would just put this like what doesn't make sense at gmail.com. Yeah, anyway, this is what I could just do. It's directly in the category set triggers. And now I'm going to go to the conditions, right? So I have conditions, and then I have actions. So if you remember, I mentioned that triggers are business rules that are event-based. So we put some conditions for some events to happen, and then if those events happen, then the actions have to do something. So condition is a ticket is created. Okay, so meet all of these conditions. I'm going to very briefly tell you, of course, give you an example of how this works in just a bit, because you have meet all of these conditions and meet any of these conditions. So what I want to do is I want to say ticket, and then I have in here ticket is created. So I want, if a ticket is created and the email is Dominic the CX guy, remember we set this email up, then I want to set the priority to normal. So ticket is created, and what else do I want to do? So I know I'm going to walk you through, for example, what else you can see here. Ticket status, number of incidents, so brand, the form that has been used, the ticket type, maybe the priority we're setting up right now. If the group is a certain group, the assignee, the requester is someone, the organization is a certain VIP, for example. If it has been created and it contains some specific tags, maybe. If the ticket channel is one or another, in this case, it's definitely going to be email. So it's worthwhile maybe, yeah, adding this here. So channel is web form, email, chat, Twitter DM, Twitter like, voicemail, phone calls. Has so many. It has a lot of channels in here. So the channel that it is coming from is, yeah, where is it from, right? So it has a lot of channels in here, right? So everything that we've discussed, social messaging, Instagram, WhatsApp, Line, WeChat, blah, blah. Yeah, Facebook, etc., help center post. Yeah, so wherever this comes from, a text message. Okay, so in this case, just to be, sorry, don't want to confuse you, but you have all of these channels. So in this case, the channel is email, ticket is created, channel is email. And what do we want? We want to say, where was this received at? What email was this received at? And I can find that in here. So updated via received at, and now it shows me like the list of all of the emails that I've set up in my Zendesk. And I'm going to say, right, for this one, toop, ticket is created, channel is email, received at Dominic the CX guy. That's it. In this particular order, I want the events to happen. So all of these events have to be true. Ticket is created, channel is email, received at Dominic the CX guy. And now the action is going to be priority. Priority, normal. I want anything that comes in, email channel, Dominic the CX guy, priority is normal. Now I can go ahead and I can create this. All right, so in set triggers, I have one here. All right, set normal priority, Dominic CX guy incoming emails. Very good. What I want to show you now is I want to show you how the any condition works. So if you remember in the email channel, we've set up for a brand, this one, Dominic CX. We set some email address, right? We set this one, Dominic the CX guy. Now, this is the one that I have set up as an external email address. But I also have some Zendesk email addresses that I have created, that this one has been created by default when I created my brand. And this is the one that I have created, if you remember, in the channel lesson. So the design session for channels, for email channel, I created this one, which is an internal Zendesk email address. As you can notify it by the domain, which is contains Zendesk in it. And then I added this external one, which is Dominic the CX guy at Gmail, so a Gmail address. So I want, for example, in my trigger to diversify it and use the any conditions to say if a ticket is received, if a ticket is created, if the ticket is created via the email channel, and then I want if any of these emails are being used. So support, order, or Dominic the CX guy. So I want, if any of these emails are being used, I still want the tickets to receive priority normal. Okay, let's go back to the trigger. This maybe it will be a little bit confusing, but I hope it isn't. So we're going to create for this brand, all of these email addresses that this brand has, we're going to put these in any condition. So if a ticket is created, channel is email, and any of these emails will be used, bear in mind, you can't use 3 of them, right? You can only use 1, right? So you can only send an email to 1 email address in this case, right? So you can, I mean, of course, you can use multiple senders, but that's not the topic of this conversation, right? So whenever a ticket is being created, it only can be sent to 1 of these email addresses inside Zendesk, not multiple, right? So let's go into our triggers. This one freshly created. So right now, all of these conditions have to be true. Ticket is created, channel is email, receive that Dominic the CX guy. But I don't want this to be the only email address that applies this priority normal. I want any of the emails that are related to Dominic CX brand to receive the priority normal. So in this case, I need to delete this one from here and go here and go to received at, and then email received at is, and then have Dominic the CX guy. Again, received at is order at dominicCX.send. This is another one. And I'm going to pull up and see the third one because I'm not sure I remember correctly. And I want you to understand what I'm doing. Hopefully this is going to be a little bit more useful. Dominic the CX guy. So if this email is in my conditions, and then this one is in my condition, then support at Dominic CX. Okay. So then receive that. Let's see, support at, no, this one, support at dominicCX.send. So let's go over the conditions again. All of these conditions have to be met. Ticket is created, channel is email, right? So these both events have to happen. Now, any of these ones can happen. So if it's received at this, or if it's received at this, or if it's received at this, still set the priority to normal. Okay, make sense? I know it does. I hope it does. Save. Alrighty, what we do now is we test it, right? I mean, that's the beauty of it. Let's open up an email address. Channel email, what do we use? All right, so this is a blank email. So let's do Dominic, the CX guy, Subject, testing, if tickets receive priority normal. All right, let's send this. Let's go to our views. Let's go to our unassigned tickets because I expect things to come up in here because this is my unassigned queue. Here we go. Testing of tickets, receive priority normal. So this one has come in and I see priority normal. Let's see what happened in here. All right, so this is my tickets. Testing tickets to see if priority is normal. Let's go to the events, right? So I don't know if you're familiar with events, but it's this one here, events. And now we can see what has happened. So subject is this, requester is Bernie, brand is Dominic CX, status is new, organization is German organization. This is because this Bernie guy is a member of this organization. So their email belongs to this organization. Tags come over from the organization. The group is German group because we've set this up already. Form is this form. Visibility is private, and then priority normal. So the trigger is set normal priority Dominic Six guy incoming email. So this is the exact trigger that we set up, right? So it works. That's amazing. Okay, good, cool. The thing that I want to do now is I want to go back to my list and now I want to create. So I have created a set trigger, right? So we set the priority. Now we want to assign a ticket, right? So we set it, and then now we have to assign it to someone, assign it to a group. So let's do a set trigger. So let's go back to here. So sorry, set triggers we created. Let's do an assign trigger. So we created the category set, and in here, obviously we go ahead and you actually go ahead and create the other remaining set triggers. So whatever priority you want to set to triggers or whatever ticket properties you want to set to trigger to your tickets, you have to do that by yourself. Obviously, we discussed that. That's why we have a collaborative configuration agreement as well, or not an agreement, but part of the setup is a collaborative configuration, which is usually depends on how much time you want to spend. It's 4 hours, 2 days, 4 days, however much time you need and how complex your setup is. And then we go in and we do these things together, right? So you don't know how to do them, you get stuck, then we go in, we see what's wrong, we see how you set those up, and then we fix them to match exactly what you're looking for. Okay, so now we create another category, which is category. We call this assign, right? Assign triggers. Okay, by default, I have a fast action in here. So what do I want to do? Okay, so what I want to do is I want to assign tickets that come to the email Dominic, the CX guy. Specifically, I want to assign them to the group, to the German group. This is what I want to do because I I know that Dominic, the CX guy, emails should go to the German group because the German group handles Dominic CX guy's emails, or anything that is sent there needs to be handled by the German group. Okay, so assign Dominic the CX guy emails to the German group. I know what you're going to say is like, hey, Dominic, but previously in the other example, the German group was already assigned. Yes, that is true. That comes over from the end user that we use. So the customer account that we used, which is my Gmail, like a Dominic Brasavano, which is my name, at Gmail, which has already been used and overly used, and it's exhausted, poor guy. And how many times it has been used for examples inside Zendesk. So it's already a user, it's already belongs to an organization, which the organization is already assigned to that group. So we're going to we're going to run a test now with another email address. So it's easier. to make so it makes more sense. So in this case, I'm just going to say again, ticket is created. Email, no, sorry, received at email is Dominic the CX guy at Gmail. Very simple. And the action, I want to say group is German group. Okay, very simple, right? So all of these conditions have to be true. Ticket is created and is received at Dominic the CX guy. And the actions is group German. Group is going to be the German group. Create. All right, so now this is this always and forever is my favorite part. Testing it out. So let's go ahead and take an email, which in this case, okay, let's take this one. So now we're going to use hi@dominiccx.com. So this is my official email at which I want you to reach out to me. So if you want to communicate with me, use this email address. Okay, so I'm going to send an email to dominiccxguy@gmail again, testing to see if prio is normal and German group up is assigned. Okay. So we're testing two things, right? So we're not just testing if we're setting up the German group, but we also have another trigger, which is prio, right? So that's the set, and this is the assign. Let's make it super duper intuitive, right? Testing to see if set priority is normal and assign, right? So this is an assign. A group, German group is assigned. Okay, perfect. Let's take this text, put it in here. Kind regards, very polite, very nice. Send. Alrighty, so let's go to our views and see what happens next. We go to unassigned. In theory, this will be assigned to the German group. So it's still going to be in the new. It's still going to have status new because no individual agent is assigned to it, just a group. Alrighty, here we go. Here it is, less than a minute ago. Testing to see blah, blah, blah. And as you can see, German group has been assigned. Priority is normal. Let's go ahead and see what is going on. So this is my ticket. It has come in, very good. Then go to events. And let's see what happens. Subject, to-do-do. Here we go. Don't want to go through this because this is something which we'll be going into in just a bit. So it's the notification trigger. It's active. I don't want you to get confused. What is important right now is to look for these two, right? So these are the ones that we've just set up, like the triggers that we've set up, and they're working beautifully. So priority normal. So it's coming from the trigger set normal priority to Dominic CXI incoming emails, and then group is German group, which comes from the trigger assign Dominic the CX guy emails to the German group. So this works beautifully, right? We can see that the group is German group here, right? On the left-hand side, you can see my mouse. And you can see the priority normal, right? So everything is working beautifully. Now we need to create a notification trigger. We're just going to go through the Notifier Requester of Receive Request trigger and how that looks like, because I feel that that's the important bit that we should focus on right now. So again, I'm going to create another category and I'm going to name it notifications, notification triggers. I'm not sure why I put the quotes, to be honest. It's this is not a trigger. This is an actual trigger. All right, so quick action, notify. Okay, I'm not going to add a new trigger. I'm just going to go over one which comes by default with your Zendesk setup. So Zendesk is nice enough and has some pre-built triggers for you, which it knows you will need. And we're going to walk through one of them, which is Notifier Requester and CCs of receive request. And this is amazing. This is the #1 trigger, which sets the tone for the communication with your customer, right? So they send in a request, and then they receive an acknowledgement that, yes, we are on it. We've received it. It's in our system. This is your ID, maybe. You, you don't need to worry. We're on top of it, right? So let's see. So trigger name, Notifier Requester, NCCs of receive request, or an acknowledgement, right? So let's go. Description, blah, blah, category. I just want to change this one, and I'm going to change it to notification trigger because this is a notification. Notify requester of receive request. So let's go through the conditions because this is very wonderfully done. So meet all of these conditions. So nothing fancy with any conditions. So meet all is the name of the game here. So ticket is created, no doubt about that. Status is not solved. Just making sure that it's been created. It can be created with the status pending, maybe an agent creates it, or a status on hold, whatever. Whatever the situation, it doesn't have the status solved. Privacy is ticket has public comments. Sometimes agents can create a ticket and it's created with an internal note, because you don't need to reach out to the customer yet. You need to maybe discuss this a little bit internally with one of your teammates before you actually reach out to the customer and ask them for information or let them know that something has been opened on their behalf. Then comment is public. Again, this is just doubling this one down. Comment is public. And then current user is end user. Okay, so this is a global feature from Zendesk, and we use it a lot. And what this means is, like, whoever is going to be the one performing these actions, so creating the ticket with the status different from solved, with a public comment is public, they have to be an end user. So whoever is doing that action has to be an end user. Okay. So they receive this fires whenever somebody is an end user. So it's a customer of ours, right? Because agents can also create tickets, but we don't want them to receive this this notification that a ticket has been created. An agent knows that the ticket has been created because they create it usually, right? So that's what the logic is. Okay, so now the actions are going to be email user, and what is the user that we want to email? It's going to be either current user, so who's creating the ticket? No, we want this to be the requester NCC. So whoever is going to be the requester of that ticket is going to be receiving this email. And then obviously you can set an email subject. In this case, it's request received. If you want this translated to different languages, you have to use dynamic content, which is a lesson which you can go over and watch in the list. And ticketing, so set up ticketing. And then the email body is your request ticket ID. So this is a placeholder. And if you remember placeholders, it's where Zendesk dynamically stores information. So in this case, ticket ID is whatever the ticket ID is for the ticket that has been created, right? So whenever a ticket is created in Zendesk, by default, it receives a ticket ID. So you want to communicate that to your customer so they know as a reference, like when they maybe come back and say, hey, you had this, you handled my ticket ID, blah, blah, and I want you to do something else for me or whatever. So it's always good to have, for the customers to have a reference to what ticket is being created on their behalf, so they can always use it in communication. Okay, has been received and is being reviewed by our support staff. To add additional comments, reply to this email. Very simple, very, very straightforward. And what we're going to do is we are saving this up. It's okay, so it's in notification triggers, it's here. It has fired once in 7 days. What we want to do now is we want to test it, right? We want to see what that looks like, because this is the communication. Oops, sorry. It's the communication with the customer directly, right? So we are acknowledging the customer for sending us a request. So let's see what that looks like in inbox. Now we're going to have to use another email. Going to have to use another email, and why that is, it's because this guy, hi at Dominic CX, this guy is an administrator inside this account. So given what we said, that the requester, sorry, the current user has to be an end user. In this case, if I email from this account, which is an admin or an agent or internal staff, this will exempt this notification from firing. So this will not fire for this email user because this is an administrator. Let's use something else. Let's use no, not this guy. No, not this guy. This one. Yeah, let's use this one. Dominic, the CX guy. Blah. Testing to see email to see notification. Ooh. Emails. Testing to see notification emails for requester and CCs. Then, all right. Let's go back to our unassigned list. I know for a fact that this particular email address is a little bit slower than all of the other ones. So this is, we're just going to enjoy a little bit more coffee with my, you can't see it. Okay, no worries. It's a rabbit. Anyway, I love rabbits. All right, let's refresh. Here it is. Okay, so priority normal group German, because we sent it to the same email address, right? So Dominic, the CX guy. So ticket is here. Amazing. Let's see the events, see what happened to it. All right, so I have 3 triggers in this case. I have a priority normal set by the set trigger. I have a group, German group from the assign trigger. And then I have an email notification from the trigger Notifier Requester and CC the support request. So it has arrived as well. And it looks like something like this. One sec. Here it is. Here's that notification. So this is my initial email. All right, so this is what I've sent over to Zendesk. And this is what Zendesk came back with and said, yeah, this is your request 371, which is the ID that the ticket got automatically when it ended up in Zendesk, has been received and is being reviewed by our support staff. To add additional comments, reply to this email. So this is what the experience looks like from an agent's perspective, and a customer's perspective, and from an administrator's perspective. So I am going to not continue with the next lesson, which is automations. I'm just going to leave it at that for triggers right now, because this is taking a little bit too longer than I expected. I'm trying to keep these videos shorter. So today you've learned how to create triggers, what the best practices are for creating them, and we've gone over in Zendesk on how to create them. We've created one for each category, right? So we've learned how the triggers work, right? So they are event-based business rules. Then we know to create set triggers, assign triggers, and then notification triggers. And then we saw how the end user experience looks like as well for the customer. And yeah, I hope this helped, and we'll see you in the next lesson for automations and SLAs. And yeah, I'll see you next time.